Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about Dungeons & Dragons, the history of Dungeons & Dragons, specifically in the year 1983. This is the 10th year of Dungeons & Dragons history since its start in 1974, and today we're going to look at Dungeons & Dragons history in the year 1983 through the filter of clear: catalysts, locations, entities, artifacts, and relationships. So who was the catalyst for Dungeons & Dragons in the year 1983? Well, it was a gentleman by the name of Frank Mensa. He was a Dungeons & Dragons designer, and he brings out a new box, which is the artifact for 1983. In 1983, we're talking about a designer for the catalyst. We're talking about another red box for the artifact. This is the 1983 Mensa Red Box. This is a box set for Dungeons & Dragons. It contains all of the it contains all of the rules you need to play. It contains dice, character sheets, and this red box will be very important because this red box, this 1983 red box, will be sold for literally tens of thousands of copies of this would be sold in the 80s. And this has that iconic cover that you've most likely seen with essentially with the fantasy warrior with the sword to the side slashing at a dragon who's coming at him with two huge fangs. It's a very iconic cover, and it continues just a drumbeat of box sets for Dungeons & Dragons, and not just box sets, but box sets that continually represent in slightly honed, slightly refined format the basic rules. And so it's really incredibly important to just understand how important each one of these box sets was to presenting a clear rule set for really intelligent, creative, artistic people, and for people who might be intelligent but not creative or artistic, or people who are creative and artistic but not super intelligent, and making that game be able to bring in people who would strain to play the game and people who would just fall naturally to play the game. Well, actually, the people who played the game very naturally would take up would very much often take up and stay on the core three, the PHB, the DMG, the Monster Manual. But the fact that the game had both this highly complex, hundreds of pages long way to play the game, but then it also, the entire game, the entire experience could fit into a box was one of the largest things that made Dungeons & Dragons propel itself forward in the 80s. All right, well, so what is our location for 1983? So our location for 1983 is Los Angeles, California. And why is this a location? Well, this is where Gary Gygax was flying to on a pretty regular basis to discuss the now begun Dungeons & Dragons cartoon that rolls out in 1983. In 1983, just 10 years into the history of Dungeons & Dragons, just 10 years into the history of Dungeons & Dragons, we are looking at a Saturday morning cartoon with Dungeons & Dragons as the main focus, and literally called Dungeons & Dragons, right? So you have literally millions of American kids who have heard about Dungeons & Dragons are now seeing Hank and all of his friends. Uni is in there, and Bobby. There's just a whole slew of exciting characters with Dungeon Master. They're fighting Venger, and the Dungeons & Dragons cartoon, to me, it is really incredible to look back. I always knew that Dungeons & Dragons did well out of the gate, but you really need to understand that Dungeons & Dragons didn't just it hit the ground running. Like, it had a Saturday morning cartoon 1 decade after its creation. It was fully embraced. Like, it was very much embraced, but not fully, because there'd still be a lot of embracing to be done. But it really came out fast, and it met with tremendous success, right out of the gate, right? And so that, and it spread very, very quickly. And this would only accelerate the growth of the Dungeons & Dragons game, is the specifically this Saturday morning cartoon. And also, it's important to understand a Saturday morning cartoon. It's important to understand that Dungeons and Dragons came out at a different time. So this is a time where children are, 8, 10, 12, are getting up at, 7 in the morning, 8 in the morning, rolling out of bed, getting some cereal, taking that cereal into the living room, turning on their television sets, and watching 4 or 5 hours of television that was just for them, that was, premium television that had just been created for them as an American children to experience. And this was something really special. Saturday morning cartoons really don't exist anymore because we have 24-hour cartoons. You don't need to watch cartoons. There are channels. There are multiple 24-hour cartoon channels now. But back in the day, that really wasn't the case. There wasn't hundreds of channels. You can count the number of channels that you could get on your antenna on two hands, right? And so you would just flip back and forth, and you would turn the dial. And Dungeons and Dragons was one of those cartoons that was right there on the dial, and that you would watch each week, and it was really exciting, and it just drew in millions and millions of kids and told them, hey, this is an exciting game, this is something you've never really seen before, watch the cartoon, play the game, or watch the cartoon, and don't even play the game, but you still know what Dungeons & Dragons is, and you still have an understanding of what the concepts are. It's pretty incredible. And so Dungeons & Dragons getting its own Saturday morning cartoon is really incredible. And I remember also when we were very young at this age, actually I was a little younger than this, but what my Saturday morning cartoon experience, we always did, my family always had enough. We never really wanted for any crucial needs, but we didn't have a ton for luxury items like televisions, which were luxury items back in the day. And so we had a television that would go out on the fritz, and you'd have to bang on the floor, right, to get our television to work. And me and my brother would bang on the floor to get our television to work, but then we would wake up our parents early on a Saturday morning. So it was always this careful balance of how hard can we bang to get the television to work, and not wake up our parents, who would then get up and really be upset because we had woken them up and be quite angry, right? And they would say, well, just don't watch television. And we were like, are you kidding? How can we not watch television on Saturday morning cartoons? It's pretty incredible. So, so everybody who lived through those times has their own unique experiences and memories, and that's definitely one of mine. So who was the entity for 1983? Well, the entity for 1983 was Ronald Reagan. This is our one of our first major celebrity presidents, and I can tell you right now, we certainly have an experience with celebrity presidents right now here in 2019. So the idea of a celebrity president now in 1983 was like kind of a novelty, and people were like, "Oh, this is interesting." And now in 2019, it really looks like. I have a distinct opinion that I'm not sure we'll ever have politician presidents again, because they're just so boring compared to celebrity presidents and presidents who can control the camera and who are, just naturally charismatic, right? So, and that charisma has been proven through the fire of earning celebrity. So it's really quite interesting. Ronald Reagan will come in, and he is going to signal to the entire United States of America and to the world, lower taxes, deregulation. This will kick off a massive wealth boom in America, and Dungeons and Dragons will benefit from this directly. So the entity for 1983 is Ronald Reagan, and then so our artifact is the Red Box. And last, what is the relationship of Dungeons and Dragons? Well, the relationship for Dungeons and Dragons is television. Dungeons & Dragons begins its relationship with television. Of course, it has a relationship with television due to its existent and brand new, exciting cartoon show, Dungeons & Dragons, which premieres in 1983 and really is just a full-on stamp recognizing the power and value of Dungeons & Dragons right there early in 1983. And the relationship with television will last for many, many years. So 1983 television show will only go on for 3 seasons. Dungeons & Dragons will never again get its own television show. And the reality, and one of the reasons why, is fantasy is very difficult to film. It's you have to use a lot of CGI. It's expensive, right? So, but there will be hundreds, if not well over 1,000 references for Dungeons & Dragons on television. Also, just a large Venn diagram portion of television writers will have played Dungeons & Dragons. And the reason why is, if you are a writer, the odds of you getting through and being a writer and having never played Dungeons & Dragons are almost slim to none. A game that uses a base element prose, you know that's going to be honey to any writer. So most television writers play Dungeons & Dragons. Many television writers play Dungeons & Dragons, and I would say even most. I think it's very unlikely that many television writers, especially in the 80s and 90s, have not played Dungeons & Dragons, and you see those references just salted throughout television. So that is a J. Scott Garibay clear history of Dungeons & Dragons in the year 1983, the 10th year of Dungeons & Dragons history. I'd love to know your thoughts or your memories of 1983 Dungeons & Dragons, and please let me know your thoughts in the comments. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful day.